Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, here to talk about the upcoming super middleweight championship bout between champion Andre Ward and challenger Andre Dirrell. Now, let me make a few points. We've all been at a party where a friend, we'll pretend it's a friend, where a friend has had, let's say, two or three beers, looks great, is talking in coherent sentences, isn't slurring his words, looks like he has it together, and then leaves the party to go in his car to drive home. Now, even though that person looks great, in study after study, it has been shown that even folks who can handle their liquor after three drinks, if they drive an obstacle course, will do worse than they would do if sober. In other words, just looking at someone, listening to them speak, doesn't tell you enough about their neurological reflexes and other things. Now, at the end of Andre Dirrell's last fight against Arthur Abraham, which I understand Dirrell won, Dirrell got knocked out. Forget about the fact that it wasn't counted as a knockout because it was a foul. I'm not saying it wasn't. But understand the body can't tell the difference. A concussion is a concussion. And the concussion that Andre Dirrell had was severe. For those of you who thought that Andre Dirrell was kidding around, I advise you to look at the Fight Camp 360 video that is up on YouTube from that fight. When Dirrell gets up, he's totally confused. He's crying. He looks at his promoter, Gary Shaw, and he says, "Gary, did I get knocked out?" Gary nods his head no. Several people in the ring tell him, "You won the fight." Dirrell is confused. He's so confused that, as he's leaving the ring, he says, "I want a rematch." He then goes to the hospital. He's clearly a guy who's completely confused. Now, let's separate out the concussions, right? How many times you go down isn't as important as how hard you go down, right? I've seen several fights, the Shane Mosley Antonio Margarito fight, where Margarito went down, was blown out, but after the fight, Margarito was able to give a lucid interview in the ring to Larry Merchant. In other words, even though Margarito got knocked out, Margarito was still coherent and knew where he was. That wasn't the case with Andre Dirrell. I consider that knockout to be a brutal knockout. Now, my point to you is simply, even though, and I've seen Dirrell on these telecasts, even though Dirrell looks great, he's all together, and stuff like that, I believe that fighting again in 6 months' time following a brutal knockout against a masterful fighter is simply asking too much. Anyone who has sprained an ankle badly knows when that ankle, when the swelling goes down and you're hobbling around, that you can be in pain and still look to other people to have your balance, right? The balance goes when you start running up and down, playing American football or soccer, and you're trying to make cuts and you're trying to juke and you're trying to move, then you know that you're not close to 100%. I don't believe Andre Dirrell is close to 100%. By itself, that reason should tell you that you need to take Andre Ward in this fight. Let's go further, though. When we talk about fighting inside, what do we mean? What I'm talking about is when a fighter gets so close up on you that they're literally grabbing one of your arms, right? And they're still able to function. Now, we often see these fights where guys are in close. Some of the most devastating punches in boxing, and I know they're not reported this way, are when fighters are in close and you see one guy with one hand free and he's hitting the opponent upside the head while they're holding on to each other. That's valid. That's legal. As long as you have one hand free inside, you can go to town on the other fighter, right? Take a look at Ricky Hatton against Costa Zoo. Take a look at Bernard Hopkins against Winky Wright, right? This is a hardcore tactic that, fighters use. It's a style of fighting where you can get inside and literally just take apart the other guy because as long as you have one hand free, then it's legal. So you could practically mug the guy in the ring. John Ruiz made an entire career of this. You could practically mug the guy in the ring as long as you have one hand free. Many fighters cannot handle that. Only one fighter in the Super 6 knows what to do in those situations, knows how to create those situations, and that's Andre Ward. All of the other guys, they can have great punches. They, can really hit hard. They can throw good short punches. Arthur Abraham, for example. The bottom line, though, is Arthur Abraham, Carl Froch, Mikkel Kessler, all of these guys, they're not brawlers inside. They're mid-range to long-range fighters. That's who Andre Dirrell is, right? We found out when Ward fought Alan Green that that's who Alan Green is. So Andre Ward has a distinct advantage when he gets inside. Now there is a way to beat a guy who can fight that style, right? When the guy's in his prime, right? Compare and contrast the first. Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, who was a master inside. The first Leonard Duran fight with the second one, right? Leonard, who fought inside the first fight and lost. In the second fight, the famous No Mas fight, it's on YouTube, actually decided to use his legs. He maneuvered around Duran, who didn't have the legs to keep up with Ray Leonard. So Ray hits him with a bevy of combinations. Duran, who could not hang with Leonard from the outside, even though he mastered him inside, ended up quitting in that fight. Here's the problem with Andre Derrell, who is better than Andre Ward from distance, using that style. I would encourage everyone to take a look at the first 2, 3 rounds of the Mikkel Kessler Andre Ward fight and just forget about what the announcer is saying. Just look at Kessler's jab. And understand, Kessler has a beautiful jab, right? Fans of Kessler know Kessler's a great jabber. Look at how he dismantled Libredo Andrade. Going into this tournament, Kessler was viewed as the Super 6 favorite. You're going to see that Kessler fires a jab several times and from distance can't even touch Andre Ward because Andre Ward is actually an excellent fighter from distance as well as being an excellent fighter up close. I believe Andre Ward wins this fight. I believe if they're far apart, Andre Ward will be able to hold his own. When they get inside, I believe Andre Ward is going to dominate. I also think that as they tire, as you get into the later rounds, you're going to see that Andre Dirrell is not completely recovered from the debilitating knockout that he suffered at the hands of Arthur Abraham. Just think about the timing. When you're 2 months out from a fight, that's when you go to training camp and you actually have to spar and things like that, right? All I'm saying is 6 months, that's just way too soon from a debilitating brain injury to have another fight, right? If you factor in the training camp, it's even less than 6 months. Anyone who's torn an ACL, anyone who has had an injury knows it takes a while for that to get back to 100%. You can be walking after ACL surgery and know that your leg is not 100%. It's the same way with the brain. I'm just saying, I know it sounds ridiculous, but fighters who've been brutally knocked out to the point where they cannot give an interview after the fight, those guys take a while to get back to where they were. I would argue that Roy Jones was never the same fighter after he got knocked out by Antonio Tarver. If you recall, his very next fight after that was against Glenn Johnson. He got brutally stopped. I like Ward in this fight. Leave your comments for me here and at gamblersadvisory.com. If I'm wrong, punish me in the ratings. If I'm right, give me a thumbs up.